Esther, and you're watching Old Fashioned Girl. It's been more than a year since I posted a video, which is really crazy to think about because it doesn't seem like it's been that long. But God has just been doing some really incredible things, and I have been crazy busy, and I still am. But I really felt like God was leading me to take some time out today to make a video about a subject that is really important to me. And that subject is, drumroll, self-image. If you find yourself constantly concerned with what other people think about you, you are definitely not alone, because I think that most girls struggle with this at one time or another in their lives, and I've definitely struggled with it before. And so I wanted to take just a few minutes to really unpack why I think we feel this way, and also share my personal testimony on the subject. I really started to think about my testimony a couple of days ago, and it all started with this little question on a form. To give a little background, the dance ministry that I dance and teach for is going to be serving at a local event called the NWA Beautiful Girls Retreat. And if you are local to this area, I would definitely recommend it. I'm going to drop a link in the description below. It is an awesome 2-day retreat for girls 4th grade through college, I think. And they really just focus on a lot of subjects that girls deal with, the same kind of subjects I talk about on my channel. This year, a couple of the speakers are Vicki Courtney and Emma Mae Jenkins, and I'm super excited about hearing them. It's a great event. It's loads of fun, so I would definitely recommend it. But anyway, back to the story. As well as dancing at the retreat, I'm also serving as one of the chaperones. And so I was at a meeting for the chaperones a couple of days ago, and we were given this questionnaire, and it was just asking a couple of questions about us and some of our beliefs and stuff like that. And one of the questions was something like, how do you think that girls struggle with beauty and self-image? And obviously I have a lot of thoughts on that, so I just began writing, and it was probably a mess. So whoever had to read that, if you were watching, I'm very sorry. But that question really got my thought process going about the word image. And I find it very interesting that we use the word self-image so much in our culture, because that word comes straight from the beginning of time. In the first book of the Bible, in Genesis, I think it's chapter 1, verse 21, where it says that God created man in his own image. I don't think it's a mistake that that Bible verse uses the word image right there. And I also don't think it's a mistake that we as humans seem to have this innate desire to be like someone else and to mold ourselves into another person's image. I believe God put that in us for a purpose, and that person is Jesus. And that image has absolutely nothing to do with your tan skin, voluminous eyelashes, perfect thigh gap, or pricey jeans, and everything to do with how deeply you love Jesus and how radically that love affects the world around you. But alas, we're humans, and as demonstrated ever since Genesis 3, we are notorious for taking things that God created to be beautiful and muddying them up. And instead of molding ourselves into God's image, we have turned to the world to mold ourselves into their image. We take those images, which are often fake, and we think that unless we can look just like that, we aren't beautiful. We look at a girl who we think is prettier than us, and we put her up on this pedestal, and because of that, if we can't match her standard, we feel worthless. And suddenly our self-esteem is shattered, because in the end, we can never attain something that God didn't intend us to be. As a preteen, I was your typical homeschool nerd, and I mean the whole 9 yards. I wore glasses, not the cool kind, and braces, and I wore cashmere sweaters and jeans with elastic waistbands, and I could often be found with my hair in braids because I thought it made me look like Laura Ingalls, and hey, who was cooler than Laura Ingalls? Looking back, it really wasn't so bad. I mean, what teenager doesn't look at their preteen fashion choices and groan just a little bit? But as I entered my teen years, I really began to resent my image in a very unhealthy way. I didn't want to stand out as the weird homeschooler. I wanted to stand out to people because they thought I was pretty and fashionable and fun. I even began to resent my personality because I was awkward and I was always either way too quiet or way too loud. And I always felt like people were laughing at me instead of with me. As I grew older and matured, I was still struggling with what people thought of me, but I'd begun to identify it, and I knew it was wrong, and I knew I had to deal with it. So one summer, my family and I went to this ultra-conservative, traditional homeschool conference, and when I got home, I believed that the Lord was telling me that I needed to wear long skirts, like, all the time. And so I hit the thrift stores, bought as many long skirts as I could, and at the time I thought that this was going to be a lifelong decision, but it turned out that God had another idea for my skirts. Suddenly the seasons in my life began to change, and after growing up around like-minded homeschoolers, God plucked me out of that, and he just placed me into these social circles where the culture was much different. I entered a world where brand names were a status symbol, and some girls cared more about contouring their face than smiling at the kid who was sitting alone. And here I am in my skirts. I felt like an Amish girl at a car show. I felt ridiculous, and I often felt lonely, but I kept at it because I really had a conviction about it. I wore skirts to church, to clean the house, to play sports, to go to the store. I wore them everywhere, and I was the only one I knew who did. Then something began to break inside me. I think those skirts set me so far apart that I started to no longer care about how people saw me or how they judged me. I started to notice that it was my love that made me stand out, not how they looked or I looked. And as those weights began to fall off of me, a lot of my social awkwardness and my shyness disappeared, and I had this newfound confidence that I'd never felt before. And then I noticed that God was starting to put me in these positions where I was the one influencing other girls and mentoring them, and that's really where my passion for youth and girls ministry started. And then I started to wear pants again. I still wear skirts sometimes, but I like to think of myself as a pretty normal, modern girl. I love fashion, modest fashion, and scrolling through Pinterest to find cute hairstyles, and I'm a social media buff who is always taking selfies with her friends, and for fun, I like to rewrite Christian remixes to pop songs. I'm sure there's still a lot of people in my life who think I dress like a dork and who think I'm an awkward, naive homeschooler because, you know, once a homeschool grad, still a homeschooler. But that's okay. It doesn't bother me anymore because there's only one image in the whole wide world that I want to emulate, and that's God's. He made me just the way I am, and he made you just the way you are. And if we follow him and we seek out his plan for our lives, he's going to use all of our strengths and all of our weaknesses to glorify him. I hope that my story spoke to you in some way. And if you really struggle with self-image, or even if you don't, I'd love to hear from you and be your friend and pray for you. So I'm going to be leaving my personal email in the description below. And shoot me an email. I'm never too busy to make a new friend. Also, I'd love to see you at the NWA Beautiful Yoga Retreat, so be sure to check that out. I don't know how long it'll take me to make another video. Hopefully it'll be less than a year this time. But until then, I will be praying for all of you, and I'll see you next time. Bye!